Well, good evening, everybody. Good to have you with us tonight for our third edition of Thursday Night Live. Some of you may have been looking for us last week. That was a fifth Thursday of the month, and that just gets confusing. Great to have you with us. Just want to remind you, if you're not able to check us out live on the Thursday night, these episodes are saved on the Facebook and YouTube channels of Sandwich Baptist Church, as well as my own personal social media channels. So if you miss an episode, you can always go and watch it on one of those types of channels, and you'll be able to enjoy those interviews. Just a reminder, this is a program designed to offer us a little bit of hope and help. It's conversational style. I've got some friends that I've known over the years and new people that I'm meeting that I'm just excited to be able to introduce to you. Tonight, I'm excited to introduce you to Lorrie Wasyliw. Lorrie has been someone I admired from a distance in our denomination of churches, and then got to know her quite well in the last 10 years or so. And Lorrie was a part of our church plant in Langley when we were over in Langley, and became a good friend and a good partner of ministry. But I'm excited to have her join us. She is someone who has spent her entire life advocating on behalf of others. She cares deeply for others and how they journey through life. So I'm going to welcome Lorrie and see if I can do this. Add to stream. There she is.
Hi.
Lorrie. Great to have you here.
Nice to see you.
Got all the technical stuff figured out, so you're there. You can hear me.
Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Great. Super.
Yeah. So, Lorrie, as I said, we spent a bunch of time together in Langley working our church plant. You still live in Langley?
Yes. Yeah. In Willoughby. Yep.
Same
house.
Awesome. Yeah. Now, I said that you've always been someone who's advocated on behalf of others. What do you do, Lorrie? How do you spend your days?
Well, my day job is I am the executive director of Wings, which is a transition house society that we now have 6 sites where we provide shelter and support to women and children who are fleeing domestic violence, as well as about 4 or 5 other programs that are not residential in nature. That's everything from emergency services to affordable housing to supportive programming and everything in between. So on any given day, we're probably looking after or serving probably 70 to 100 people every day. Yeah. It's a God story. It's an awesome God ministry is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's in the 3 years I've been back here, it's obviously grown because there wasn't 6 sites 3 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
We are now doing stuff in New Westminster and Delta and bunch of things. Yeah. It's good.
So you're keeping busy.
Yes. I also am involved on the Baptist Housing board. So I am the chair of the Baptist Housing Board, which is a wonderful God ministry that looks after seniors in our province.
Yeah. Got a number of facilities here in the Victoria region
that
are helping people. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, I also remember, and I don't know if this has gone anywhere, you were starting to have some conversations within New Westminster regarding homeless issues. Have you been able to do any more on that, or is that on the back?
No, still involved with the Homelessness Coalition and looking after our folks on the street and trying to help them through this COVID era. So, yeah, that's just a coalition of a bunch of different service organizations and individuals who really care and want to make a difference. So, yes, still involved in that as well. Yeah.
Wow. So there are other Lorrie Wasylws out there who care for people who have been kind of pushed to the side at times, eh?
Yeah. Very much so.
I'm kind of curious, how did this all develop? How did this advocacy, this looking to others who have been maybe treated unfairly, how did this develop, this heart?
I think I've always had this heart. I was a pastor's wife for, almost 20 years. And I think that's where it really starts developing, because it's your whole focus as a stay-at-home mom, looking after kids, being a pastor's wife, and just focusing on caring for people. But for me, I'm not really, I know this might come as a surprise to you, Lindsay, but I'm never really considered myself to be a brave person. And I just consider myself to try to be an obedient person. So
Okay.
when God, calls you to do something or asks you to do something, I need to make sure that I'm going to say yes to that. And that's kind of where all of this starts, is God brings something along and shares that with me and tells me what he wants me to do, and everything in me screams no. And there's that weak little voice that says yes. It's the obedience thing. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that feels like we should pursue that a little bit. We'll maybe get to that later. Curious, COVID has hit us all and has affected us in different ways. What has COVID sort of done to Lorrie's life?
Well, our Wings is an essential service, so we never closed down. So we've continued to be operating 24/7 and serving all the people we're serving, and the rotating door of people who come through. So incredibly large challenge to manage safety for everybody. And all the protocols and all the things that you have to have in place, and not just figuring out protocols to keep my staff safe, but also then all my residents safe and everybody in between, and then having to work remotely because I'm immediately removed from the situation due to the rules that came out. And it was especially challenging near the beginning when we didn't really know what was going on. We didn't know how to treat the virus. We didn't know anything about it. And one of my staff tested positive. And it threw us all into a frenzy because we didn't know that the reality is, at the end of that story, was it was a false positive. So she actually wasn't positive. Okay. But we didn't find that out for 6 days. And in that 6 days, it was a bit challenging and crazy. And so, yeah, lots of challenges managing the COVID experience. And just the loneliness and isolation too. Working remotely, I think, is hard for people when they're used to working within a very close-knit team. Yeah, it's challenging.
Yeah. So, used to really enjoy our 6:30 coffees at Starbucks just before you would head in to the office. Clearly pre-COVID days.
Yes.
You sit here and you smile and you laugh, and yet you're involved in such a pretty heavy ministry. Like there's a lot of weight to what you sort of see and carry. And I've always admired, envious, frankly, of your ability to walk seemingly. Well, I know it's not easy, but your ability just to walk and continue to lead through all of that. Can you maybe just talk a little bit about how you do that? How do you approach it? How do you carry it?
Well, the thing that's even more challenging about that is I led a very sheltered life.
Okay.
Grew up in a very conservative home, no crime, no real hugely dysfunctional things going on around. Didn't really get exposed to the dark side of the world and the issues, the real issues that face people in the world today. So I never experienced any of that. I was very sheltered in my life. And so to plunge into the world of domestic violence, which is what that is, was a shock. And to start hearing stories of what people actually do to other people was just horrifying to me. And I have to, be honest, to confess, boy, it took the stuffing right out of me on a number of days. And you have to develop a little bit of a barrier for yourself so that it doesn't rob your soul and, strip you dry, suck you dry all the time. So learning how to the secret for me really was bringing God into that. So making sure that I always was listening to the right voice. So realizing, am I going to listen to that voice that says, this is hopeless. There's no future for any of these people, versus the voice of Scripture, God's voice, which says, I am in charge. I've got this. I know what I'm doing. I am at work. And I think for me, the thing that brought it down was just seeing how, where even though it's bleak and there's some really horrible things, if you just sit and ponder and look at that, you actually can see God at work. And there's so many things where it's this little thing here and it's that little thing over there and it's this little thing here, and you realize God's very present. And it's actually interesting, Lindsay, that I've seen God more do things right in front of me in my time at Wings than I ever did as a pastor's wife.
Wow. You used a word that you said you need to be able to live with a bit of a barrier so that it doesn't strip you dry. Can you elaborate just a little bit more on that? Because sometimes you might hear that and people go, oh, you're creating a barrier. You're cold and insensitive to what is going on.
Yeah. And I think what I'm saying there is if you invest your entire self into one person or one family, then there's nothing left for anybody else, including yourself and your own personal life. So you have to figure out how you can agree with God that you're not God.
Okay.
And leave up to God what's his to do and say, I have a role to play here. And my role isn't to do X, Y, and Z. My role is to do A, B, C. And sometimes I think where people get in trouble is they get too invested and they get too into a situation, and they then have to become the fixer of that situation. They have to become, the answer to that situation. They're the only ones that can make a difference. And they start taking on a God role, which isn't theirs to take on. So I can't fix these people's lives. I need to know that going in. That's not my role to play. I have a role to support that and be there for them and help them and whatever that is, but I can't play God. I can't be God in their lives. And when we try to do that, I think, and you find that in everybody's situation, in my kid's life, in my husband's life, it doesn't never work to play God, does it?
Oh, Dennis, are you listening? Lorrie's
No,
not going to play God in your life. Oh, that's wonderful.
He's watching the election results still. Yeah. So all of those things. So it's not at all shutting down your caring and your compassion and truly you. It's understanding that you've got to be able to have a boundary about that. Yeah. Or you won't make it. You'll burn out. You'll just hit a wall. You won't make it.
Yeah.
You won't have the level of emotional capacity that's needed. Yeah.
People who are watching this as a part of SBC would know that that actually became a part of my story. Was me doing my best Wile E. Coyote impersonation and slamming hard into a wall and sort of slithering down. And you saw that probably coming a little bit. We had lots of conversations, and trying to think that through personally. So I appreciate what you're saying. So
hindsight is 20/20, right? Looking in the rear view mirror. Sometimes these things happen too, and you don't know exactly what it is, and you don't know the extent of it. And I think I've experienced that where others have spoken into my life and said, "Hey, Lorrie, you gotta back out of this a bit." And you need that with people. You need to have people in your life who will be able to say those kinds of things to you.
Okay. Yeah. So we have people on a full spectrum of different experiences and life sort of seasons, if you like. I'm just kind of curious, what are some of the things that you've put into practice in your own life that have helped you become the woman, the leader, the person of God that you are?
Well, I would imagine that in reality, I'm not that much different than other Christians, that we spend a lot of time wrestling. Wrestling with, as I said, wrestling to that, listen to the right voice and getting really tempted to listen to a wrong voice. One of the things that I find myself wrestling with, and I think, why do I have to keep coming back to this spot, is just wrestling with the need to understand. So, I need to, the faith piece and the discipline piece and the determination piece is that God does the right thing. he is at work. He's got this. And so sometimes, okay, it's going to take longer than I think, or I'm not going to be able to understand that, or I'm going to question them. And so wrestling with that, wrestling to give that up, giving up the need to understand is probably one of my biggest challenges, because I like to understand things. I like to understand what's going on with that and why did that happen. And also because I think women do this more than men. We like to fix everything. We like to solve problems and fix things and have things, be correct and be right. And we don't like conflict. We don't like unresolved things. And so we're all about. And so sometimes it's wrestling with the need to be a fixer of things and be able to realize, okay, I need to give that up. Another thing that's really helpful for me is reminding myself to actually take the time to take a breath. Like, just stop for a minute and think about this, and rather than react and go crazy or whatever, think about this and what do I need to see in this? What do I need to learn from this? What is God trying to tell me in this? That be still and know that I am God thing probably is a really has become a really important verse for me, because I'm can be pell-mell. And sometimes in the job, you have to make pretty immediate decisions. So you end up learning, to do that a little bit rotely and routinely, and realizing, hey, I need to hear God's voice. I need to take the time to do that. Need to be aware of what's going on around me, what's happening with other people. It's not just about me. All of those kinds of things, figuring that out. But I think the biggest one is always double checking, who am I listening to in my head?
Yeah.
Who am I listening to? And is it the truth? Is it God? Is it God's word? That's the biggest thing. If I can start there every day with that in mind and keep that kind of at the back of my mind, that's what gets me through some of the tough stuff. And that's my choice. I have that choice to make. So I can choose to do a day without that, and those days never go well. Those days just don't go well. So I have a choice. I've got to make that choice. It's a choice of this discipline and determination, but it's a choice that I face. And I think it's a choice everybody faces. What are you going to do?
Okay, so you talk about being still and knowing that he is God, getting yourself sort of centered on that. But then that sounded to me like a knot in the middle of sort of the fray moment. But then you also talked about there needs to be some be still and know that he is God stuff in the midst of the fray.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. It's just a learned thing over time? Or are there any little tricks that you do?
No, it's just discipline. It's just discipline. I'm from Alberta, born and raised in Alberta. And I've always thought that Albertans had a mind of their own. And I've met a lot of very strong-willed Albertans, and I think I'm one of them. I think I'm stubborn, and I'm fairly strong-willed, and I'm all of those things. So it's discipline. It's discipline to obey.
You mentioned that you have some people who at times have maybe said, "Hey, Lorrie, watch it." Are these random people? Are these a specific set of people you've kind of tapped on the shoulder?
It's probably both. It's probably both. Yeah. And part of that is just being transparent to be able to for people to know that the day I come across to people as being perfect is the day I need to exit the scene. So when you're transparent and you say, I haven't got this covered, I haven't got this, I need to be told. I can be very subjective about myself. I need people's objectivity to speak into that. And and I think when you're transparent and you're open, people might venture out and maybe tell you one thing. And if you're receptive to that, then it might give them the ability to become more open with saying something to you because they know that it's safe to actually say something to you. Yeah. And I live for that. I love that because I need that. I need that. Yeah.
You
It's
used
just
to,
not so great when it comes from my oldest child. When your children tell you, "Hey, you got an issue," that's the hardest person to hear that from. Is it the same way for you, Lindsay? It's hard to hear those comments from your kids, right?
Yeah, and some of them will be watching this at some point, and I would say, yeah, it's not always easy, but they do know me well.
It's good. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
because they do have an inside track. It's just rah, rah.
yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, I have a look, and I've been told this by my kids. The staff here tell me this. I don't think I have a look, but apparently there's something I do, and I need to stop that because it's sending the wrong message that I don't want to hear anything. And there's so many things. I want to get back to something you said earlier. You said you have a choice. Now, you are in both a career, but just as a person, as I said earlier, you advocate for people who have faced some really difficult stuff and are victims of some horrific things. They have a choice at some point, or they're victims, but they also have a choice. How, as they move forward, how do you try to articulate that? I realize you may not be as hands-on as you once were, but boy, that's a tough thing.
It is a tough thing, but there's really two types of choices. So I think, you obviously have a choice of what you decide to do in terms of actual, physical decision, if I need to do this or I need to do that. So a choice regarding actions. But you also have a choice about what's going on in your head. So even if you're in a really bad situation, you have a choice of what you're going to be and who you're going to be in that situation. So are you going to make a choice to get mired in depression and self-loathing and second guessing yourself? And, are you going to get mired in negativity and whatever? Or are you going to choose to stay hopeful and choose to focus on positive things? And so that's kind of more what I think, even if you're stuck in a really bad situation and there might not be the choice for you to do something actually right on the spot about the situation you're in, you still have a choice of what's going on up here. And I think the illustration I would use for that is we take in a lot of multicultural women who come from other cultures in the world. And I am always so humbled by those women in particular, for the most part, because even in the midst of horrible things that have happened to them, which would just slay me and slay most of the people I know if that happened to me personally, they have a courage and a bravery and a determination, and they don't complain and they don't grumble and they don't whine and they don't all of those things. They've just kind of accepted that is that, but they're not stuck there. They want to try to move on and work towards a better life. And I look at them and I've learned so much from them, Lindsay, about how easy it seems to be for me and for people that I know to get stuck in that. And that's the choice. That's the choice, is what's in here and how you're going to be inside, what you're going to choose to be inside yourself. Even if you live in a doghouse or a mansion, And
Yeah.
don't they say too that you go to cultures and you go to places where people have little to nothing, very little to live on. They don't know where their next day's meal's coming through. And yet some of those people are some of the happiest people in the world. And you think, what is that? And what that is that's a choice to be a certain way within yourself.
So someone comes to you or your organization who has faced obviously some horrific experience, the abuse that can be shown in or acted out in so many different ways. And you recognize in them that they've made the hard choice to reach out to you, but there still obviously needs to be some work on that daily choice. What are maybe some of the things, practices, or I don't know, books or anything that you sort of try to help them with to transform their brain, their thought
Yeah.
process?
I think it's developing the belief that they actually have capacity to some regards. So when I say that, for a lot of these gals who come to us, they have become to believe, because of what's been done to them or what's been said to them, that they're useless, that they can't do anything, that they'll never amount to anything, that nobody will ever care about them, that they're basically trash at the doorstep. And so to be able to develop in them the capacity that, hey, you do have the ability to learn and grow and do things. And you know what? Some of that could be teaching them how to cook a meal for 16 people, because we eat together family style, at least not right now in COVID, but we would eat together family style. So all of a sudden you have a woman who doesn't think she's worth anything. And at the end of the day, she's cooked a meal for 16 people. What is the message that that's giving to her? Is it, hey, I actually can do something. I actually can be whatever. I mean, that's just one simple example, but it's building on that little building blocks in people's lives to help them realize, yeah, I do have capacity. I can actually make decisions for myself, learn things, grow things, gain information, and get back on my feet. Yeah.
You used a phrase earlier that it's so easy to possibly go into a cycle of self-loathing. You talk about depression and just that, I guess it's that downward spiral. Yeah. And again, I'm going back to that word choice. And you said you get to choose to be hopeful. That must be really challenging for some. I mean, you mentioned some seem to just be amazing at it, their capacity, but it must be hard for others. Any other thoughts on how to help people? Because you're talking specifically. Sorry, Lorrie, you're talking specifically in your world of women and shelters and things. We've got people watching and will be taking this in who that's not their experience, but it's still a similar pattern. Am I right?
Well, it certainly is, because in the world, and somebody said this, that pretty much everybody you meet and encounter has had something bad happen in their lives, or they're carrying around some kind of a burden or feeling the weight of something. And that's life. And so even though that's in a different realm and a different thing, it's the same application to say kindness and care and compassion and genuine empathy towards a person really makes a difference. And I can't begin to tell you the many of times I've seen a woman almost come to life when she's been treated with respect and kindness. And I don't think that's too much differently out in the world. I know Dr. Henry says be kind, all of her things, but there's a grain of truth in there that's very, very scriptural and biblical. But it's also, we need to be kind to each other, and we need to demonstrate that kindness and care and compassion and see people for real individuals standing in front of us. And that's for our family, that's for our coworkers, that's for the people we meet in the grocery store. And even when you go into the grocery store, do you ever really look at the clerk at the checkout counter? Do you ever really speak to that person and throw in a couple of sentences of chit chat when you're talking to her? Or is it just if you walked out the door and I said to you, what was that person like who just sold you your groceries? Would you even be able to describe that person to me? Because sometimes we get so wrapped up in our own self and our own lives and what's going on inside that we don't actually see beyond that. And that actually is, to me, a real help to dealing with what's going on inside, is when you actually focus outward, when you actually look at those people and have that chit chat with that gal and have that conversation with her. You walk out of that store feeling better. And you can probably be pretty sure she's feeling better, because it's not that often that people actually do that. And particularly in this time of COVID and isolation and all of that, the more we should take all of those opportunities to touch the life that God brings in front of us. It's a brief, what I call it, it's kind of a philosophy for me. It's a brief shining moment. That might be all I have with whoever that person is. It's a brief shining moment. Who do I want to be? And can I reflect God to that person in that brief shining moment? Yeah.
Yeah, there's always been that challenging statement by Jesus that you find life when you give it away.
Yeah.
When you lose it, when you offer it out.
It's sometimes really hard to feel sorry for yourself when you see what's going on with other people, and you think, oh my goodness, what on earth do I have to feel sorry for in my life? And it's humbling, very, very humbling. Yeah. Yeah.
You talked about I've been taking notes, Lorrie. Talk about you need to learn to listen to the right voice, and in that sentence, you then said there's a wrestle that you're always going on with this need to understand or not, and your challenge is to go, I don't need to understand everything, but I need to be present. I sensed you were kind of saying I need to be present in this and see what God wants me to do. Is wrestling, is that tension? Let me say, I don't think that tension ever really goes away. I think that's probably a tension that we just need to learn how to wrestle with day in and day out, and almost accept it and go, that's okay. I'm just going to wrestle with it again today.
Yeah. Yeah. But you always know what the outcome is.
Well, sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's part of being human beings, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, people have asked me how I'm doing. And I've decided to use a phrase, and I don't know if you would agree with it or not, but as I told you, I'm doing great right now. But you know what? I'm in recovery. I'm just every day. I'm just getting up and I'm putting into practice the things that are going to help me trust God and live in His hope every day. Yeah. And some days aren't great. You know, some days are fantastic. Frankly, today wasn't a real good day for me. But I was looking forward to seeing you and hearing things. But there are times where that bad day could really tip me back. But I'm learning to, I guess what I heard you say, live with the wrestle and that it's okay.
Yeah. And realize that you can be doing really good 1 minute and all of a sudden you're not. And it just makes you realize how vulnerable we are as people, and how fragile we actually are as people, and how much we need God. Yeah. I mean, that's just a constant thing. You think, oh, I've got this, you know. Oh, no, you don't. No, you don't. And God needs to remind you about that. And He does. Yeah.
So I told you we're going to go about 35 minutes or so. We're there. We're there. Okay. Any last thoughts that you'd like to share with us? Anything that, maybe you'd thought about that you'd love to?
Yeah, not so much. I think I've pretty much said it, is just to, take the time to think about your thinking. People, when people do that, who takes the time to do that? But when you think about your thinking, it really helps show you why you are what you are, and how you think what you think, and where you go what you go. And just spend some time thinking about, is what I'm thinking actually aligning with Scripture? Is it aligning with God? Is it aligning with who God is and who He tells me He is and who He's proven Himself to be? And that's the homework.
There you go.
Lifelong homework. Yeah.
It really is. It really is. Yeah. Lorrie, we just scratched the surface. I think I said to you when we talked yesterday, I'm going to want to have you back on because there's just so much more to go through. So in the new year, we're going to I'm going to reach out to you again and we'll have you on. So thank you so much. Thanks for who you are.
Well, you made it fairly painless. So thanks.
Well, thank you very much, Lorrie.
Okay.
God
Yeah.
bless. Say hi to
Okay.
Dennis for me, hey?
Okay, take care.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Yeah. Bye
Bye.
now. Well, everybody, I hope you found that enjoyable and helpful. Yeah, we're going to have Lorrie back on. There's just so much more to dig into with her story. Just want to remind you that these episodes are on the Facebooks of Saanich and myself, and also Saanich is in my YouTube. And so you can check out these broadcasts at another time as well. We are going to be taking a little break from Thursday Night Live. I'm heading in for some surgery on Monday, and I'm going to be off for a number of weeks. So it is likely that the next Thursday Night Live will be in the new year, believe it or not, in January. I might try to squeak one in earlier. I'm just not really sure how all that'll work out. But thanks for being a part of this. I hope this was helpful. God bless.